All right, good evening, everyone. I hope you're able to hear me okay. Welcome, welcome, welcome to Central Missouri. This is where Kristen and I are speaking from today. We are with the Missouri Department of Conservation, and my name is Becky Matney. I'm with the Runge Conservation Nature Center here in Central Missouri at the Runge Nature Center in Jefferson City. And with me today, I've got Kristen Heath-Acre, who is with the Missouri Department of Conservation, and she is our state ornithologist. So I did put in the chat earlier that we are going to be starting at 6 p.m. The presentation should last about 1 hour. We ask that you use the chat function to ask any questions. We will answer them at the end of the presentation, but feel free to put those questions in at any time. We will get to them. At the end of the presentation, tomorrow morning, you should be receiving an email, a follow-up email about the program and some links and things that will help guide you towards what we talked about today. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and let Kristen go ahead with the presentation, but again, feel free to put those questions in the chat function. Kristen?
All right. Thank you, Becky, for that introduction. Hi, everyone. It's great to be here. I'm glad you were able to make it today for this webinar on Missouri birds and habitats. I'm the state ornithologist, and I've been here for about 3 years with the department, moved to Missouri in 2020. And so this is learning Missouri birds has been a journey for me too. So this is a great webinar for me to give. And this is directed at beginner birders, but hopefully intermediate birders, anyone on the webinar will get some good information for this too. But this is kind of targeted towards very beginner birders. And this is all part of, excuse me, the Missouri Birding Challenge webinar series. We are starting our second Missouri Birding Challenge this May 1st. And registration is now open. So if you haven't registered for that, please do so. Let's get started. Now, what we're going to cover today is your basic introduction to bird ID. I'll give you tips and tricks, how to really get started. And really, we're going to talk about how you probably know more than you think. It's easy to be overwhelmed by birding, but I'll be willing to bet you know more than you know, that you have a good foundation to start. Also, of course, go over a few common bird species. We could go for hours talking about going through each bird species one by one, but I'm going to just give you just a handful. And then at the end, I'll talk about some free apps and resources and tools that you can use to help you start on your birding journey. Now, before I get started, I want to, we all want to acknowledge that birding can be kind of overwhelming, and not only because there are a lot of birds out there and they can be tough to identify sometimes, but many people are intimidated by birding. Maybe they went bird watching with a know-it-all birder who's shouting out the birds, not letting you learn, not letting you try out your birding skills, and that can be pretty off-putting. But for the most part, most birders that I know are generous, patient, and kind, and want you to learn as much as possible. This birding is for everyone, but we want this, we want this to be a safe birding space, free from judgment. This webinar in particular, this is a safe space. Question, you can have any question, nothing is too silly. I want everyone to be comfortable. So we're all here to learn birds, and I want to put that out up front. I kind of think of this as like learning a language. You're not going to learn if you're not comfortable practicing the words and mispronouncing things and sounding kind of funny. So in that vein, you want to find a good birding friend that you're comfortable with. So that's a big part of this, is find a good birding friend. It can be someone who doesn't know their birds either. It can be a mentor who's really good at birding, but I think that's key to really getting your birding jump started. Birds are awesome and we all want to learn them, and they're just for everybody. So some basic bird ID things we need to know. First, when we think about identifying birds, we often think of color first. Color and field markings. this bright American goldfinch is a good example of how you would notice that color right off the bat. And it's black head, it's black wings. But that's not always the case, but I'll talk about that here in a second. But the birds of Missouri come in a rainbow of colors. They're beautiful blues and greens and blacks and whites, oranges. The state bird of Missouri is a good example. That's a male eastern bluebird right in the middle. So Missouri is a great place to get a really good diversity of birds because we have a great diversity of habitat. And color is something you're going to cue into, and it's a great tool to start with, a great cue to start with. But that's not always going to be the case. I think morphology is also almost more important sometimes. Morphology being the size and shape of the bird and its body parts, which tell us a lot about their form and function. So this American avocet here in this photo is a great example of how morphology might be the first thing you notice about a bird, and maybe the best way to describe that bird. So this avocet has a recurved bill. It lifts up at the end, it's curved up at the end, it has long legs, it's a long neck, and it tells you a lot about where you might find that bird. So this is a wading bird. It forages in shallow water, and it forages for insectivores. Can everyone, can anyone hear me? I'm getting some, no one can, okay. Some people can hear, okay. Great, I'm gonna keep going. Sorry for those
Yep,
of you
I
who
think
can't
we're
hear.
good.
Okay, so avocets are going to forage in the sediment in that water. So this is a good example of how you might not want to describe that bird by its color, although it is, a vibrantly beautiful bird, especially in breeding plumage. And of course, song is a great way to learn your birds. This is a tough one though. I will go over some bird song, and this one takes practice. So I'm a very visual learner, so I have a lot of trouble with learning bird song. It takes a lot of practice for me, and I often have to relearn bird songs every season. But that's just part of it. Practice makes perfect. And there are some kind of tricks that you can use to help remember those songs if you're a visual learner. And then, of course, habitat. We often overlook habitat, but this is one of the most important things with identifying birds, where you are seeing it, where you are hearing it. Grasslands, forests, wetlands are all going to have their different suites of bird species. And so make sure you're taking a look around where you are, and that's going to help you identify your birds. Now, a little more about morphology. So I wonder how many people on this webinar would consider themselves to be a birder. Chances are not very many. When we do ask this question, you might get one or two hands put up. But I want you to take a look at these silhouettes. Becky, I'm gonna pick on you. What do you think the bird on the far left is?
Well, let me ask the chat first. Go ahead and put in the chat if you wonder what that bird on the left is. Okay, we're getting finch, sparrow.
Finch. Yep.
Sparrow, yep.
Very good,
Okay,
very good.
good.
And the bird in the middle?
What about the bird in the middle?
Robin. Yep.
Robin.
And the bird on the right? Yeah. So
Oh,
even
good.
if you are, you consider yourself a very basic birder or not a birder at all, you already have a good foundation. You might just not know it yet. And this is where you can get started. So this is a good way to actually kind of chunk up your birds. So if you see a bird and it's sparrow sized, you already know where to start. And this is a good tip that I tell people. If you have a field guide in the hand, generally, this is not across the board, but generally the larger birds are going to be in the front of your field guide, and the smaller birds are going to be towards the back. And that is just a general rule. That's, hummingbirds are in a weird spot, but generally, if you see a really large bird, start at the beginning of that field guide. This is a great kind of infographic from the Cornell Lab of Ornithology, and it combines silhouettes with where you might find that bird. And these are you're going to start combining things like the bill shape and the tail length with where you're seeing that bird. So the birds that are on the telephone wires there, the birds flying overhead, those silhouettes are telling you a tremendous amount of information. Becky, what do you think those birds flying overhead are in the middle?
I'm gonna guess geese.
Yeah, they're geese. Um, the birds between the bird between the tree and the fence post, that's a great blue heron, and that you're just getting that information from its shape and size. So start cueing into those things. Really pay attention to that bill, the tail length, things like that, and where you're seeing the bird, because you're not going to see generally you're not going to see a a woodpecker sitting on a telephone wire, for example. Now, how do we describe these birds? Kind of takes some practice, and so we're gonna practice with describing a few different species of birds that you would commonly find in Missouri. This first bird is a golden crowned kinglet. This bird breeds in the boreal forest up north. Missouri is in its wintering range, so you're only going to see this bird in the winter. And it's really remarkable. It's one of the tiniest birds we have here in North America, and it's able to survive some really cold climates. But I would describe this bird as tiny, round, almost no neck, no visible neck. And then, of course, that bright golden crown, if you're able to see that. We're just kind of practicing how we're describing these birds. Has a teeny little bill. This bird you would probably describe by its tail. So this is a scissor-tailed flycatcher. These birds you see in southern Missouri. I've seen them in Jeff City, so mid-Missouri as well. But really that tail is going to be the first thing you notice. It's got beautiful orange on its wings, and it kind of spreads out that tail as it flies around. This is my favorite bird. This is a lot of people's favorite bird. This is definitely my favorite bird. A lot of people ask me that question. Greater roadrunners. This is another one you're going to see in southern Missouri. And you would describe this bird probably, first of all, it's running around on the ground. It's got long legs, a big bill, that crest, that blue eye patch behind its eye, long tail. If you remember all of these things, you're describing this bird this way, you'll be able to go find a field guide and identify this bird later. This bird, a cerulean warbler, small, maybe not as small as the golden crowned kinglet. It's a little bigger than that. You're going to see this bird flitting around up in mature deciduous forests near rivers. But this bird you might describe as having a little pointy bill, but it's blue. This is when you're going to kind of cue into that color. If it's a male cerulean warbler. So just kind of practice how you're describing these birds, kind of cue into the different morphologies that you want to take note of, like the bill, the size of the body, the tail length, and where you're seeing the bird. I talked a little bit about beaks, but beaks are really one of the most informative things to look at. A bird's beak tells you a lot about what it eats, for example. Now this bird, Becky, what do you think this bird eats based on that big old honking bill?
Seeds.
Yeah, that is a seed crushing bill. This is actually a female rose-breasted grosbeak. These are common feeder birds during migration, so keep an eye out. I wouldn't say super common, but I get them at my feeder most years. But the female has that really distinct eye stripe, a white wing bar, has a streaky breast, but the males have that bright red chest, black head, big white wing bars, really beautiful bird, but that bill is just really striking. That is a seed-eating bird. Cardinals are another seed-eating bird. So it really, that bill is going to tell you what family these birds are in. So these are in the finch family. This bird, this is not one you see in Missouri. If you do see it, let us know so all the birds in the world, birders in the world can come see it. This is a boat-billed stork. I'm sorry, heron, boat-billed heron. This is not a Missouri bird. This is a tropical species, but this is a bird that actually scoops fish out of the water. So that's, you can tell a lot by the form of its bill, how it's going to eat its forage and eat its prey. This bird, I bet, I would be willing to bet some of you know this bird. This is an eastern whippoorwill. So it says whippoorwill, whippoorwill, and sings in the dawn and dusk. And when the moon's bright outside, it forages on the wing. It forages for moths and things like that. But its bill looks teeny, teeny, tiny. It has a teeny, tiny bill, but when it opens its mouth, it just opens like half its mouth. It's like a muppet, but it catches big moths on the wing. And so this, it's a good example of how the form really it's the function of this bird. This is a moth catching bird right here. So let's practice a little more. So this first bird on the left, what do you think this bird eats? This little pointy billed bird. Beak versus bill, you can kind of use them interchangeably.
I'm thinking caterpillars, and people are saying
Caterpillars.
insects and
Yeah.
bugs.
Yep. This is a black-burning warbler. It gleans insects off of leaves and bark and things like that. So that's perfect. Now, this bird is another one you don't see in Missouri. This is a Puerto Rican bullfinch. That bird, what do you think it eats? Yeah, that's a seed crushing bill right there. Big honking bill. So pay attention to those beaks. They can tell you what family these birds are in and where to look in your field guide. Very important. We're looking throughout, the rest of the bird. What are we cueing into? How do we describe that bird? And so this is a simplified photo of a bird and the different parts of its body and the words that we use to describe those body parts. So the crown, the throat, the breast, the sides, the bellies, the rump, the undertail coverts, we actually often call a vent. So here's an example of birds with crests. We call these crests. And these are feathers pointed up. They can point these crests up. They can point them down and smooth them out. It depends on how spicy they're feeling. This Carolina chickadee here has no crest. Here are birds with caps. So this chickadee on the left has a cap and a throat patch. And this bird on the right is a chipping sparrow. And sparrows are good examples of birds that you want to not cue into their back. You really want to focus on those facial markings and the chest and the belly and the breast, because most sparrows have those streaky brown and black backs. They're all going to kind of look the same if you just focus on their backs. So this chipping sparrow has that rusty cap. It's got that black eye line. A black eye line, a white eyebrow, if you will, or eye stripe. But this back is not going to be what you want to cue into. It doesn't have any streaks on its breast. It's kind of got a uniform gray breast. This is a gray catbird. So it has a kind of dark cap, and it has a rusty vent. That's how you would describe that. And it's kind of uniform gray all over. Different ways of describing different feathers on this bird. So back, breast, flank. These are its flanks right here under its wing. Rump, nape is at the back of its neck. Eye line and vent. Let's look at some warblers. Warblers are fun to cue into field markings. So different field markings include wing bars. These are an important one on warblers. This bird, you might not cue into the wing bars though. You're going to probably cue into that bright yellow throat. And this is an aptly named yellow-throated warbler. This is a male, but it does have these big, bold white wing bars. So does this pine warbler. But this pine warbler is a little more, it's a little less distinctive than this yellow-throated warbler. And this is where you get into the nuance of birding. You really want to cue into things like, what does it look like under its tail? Does it have yellow under its tail? Does the yellow extend all the way to its tail? Does it have any yellow at all on its belly? Does it have yellow on its throat? You know, what color are these different parts of the body? You can get into really specifics. So a great guide if you really want to get into warbler ID is it's called the Warbler Guide, and it goes into you know, you look at these birds from underneath all the time. These birds at the tippy tops of trees often. There's a thing called warbler neck where you're just looking up, straight up all the time and your neck gets so tired. But you're seeing these birds from this view and it can be diagnostic. You know, the patterns and colors can be diagnostic. And when I say diagnostic, it means that's the only bird that has that pattern. Like this magnolia warbler, the only one you're going to see with this pattern under its tail. So we're getting into the nuance of birding where it gets really, really specific, but really fun in my opinion. This prothonotary warbler has no wing bars. It's kind of a uniform yellow olive wash all over. This one at the top here, we've seen this bird. This is a Blackburnian warbler male, and this one below is a Blackburnian warbler female. So now we're really getting into the nuance. So some of these, or an immature male, it's a female or an immature male. So this is, I think, where it gets a little overwhelming with the bird ID. And I totally understand it, but we all have to start somewhere. And just knowing that birds can be different, have different plumages at different times of the year is a place to start. You don't have to start with the complicated warbler IDs, but just you know, just so you know, some of these birds are different, have different plumages depending on if you're in the spring or in the fall after they're breeding, or sometimes males can look like females, things like that. To remember birds, we often anthropomorphize them. So we use, you know, human descriptors for birds to help us remember what they look like. So this northern flicker, you might say, has a mustache or a necklace or polka dots. You might, you know, of course, say this horned lock has horns. These are not actually horns. These are just little feathers, but it's amazing how much they look like horns. This great horned owl also has horns, just feathers. This hooded warbler has a, you know, looks like he has a balaclava on. So these, you can use these kind of descriptors to help you remember, and some of them are pretty common throughout throughout the birding world. And here is just this is kind of where we like to tell you anything, do whatever it takes to help you remember. It doesn't matter how silly. For example, this worm-eating warbler, you could say it has worms on its head. They kind of look like worms. These black stripes are very distinctive. The males and the females both look like this. So whatever works for you is, you know, what you're going to go with. So don't be afraid to be silly and make funny, you know, ways to remember these birds. So this is a belted kingfisher. So this is a female. It's got a belt on. That's how we are going to remember this. It's got a big pointy bill, that punk rocker crest. This is a common one around big rivers in Missouri. But that the males don't have this belt, by the way, just the females. this is a good example, I think, for being careful what you cue into and how you describe a bird, because these birds, both, you might describe them as having a red head. However, these are very different species, of course. This one on the left, you might be lucky to have at your bird feeder if you live near a woodland or a forest. This one is more common in suburban, urban areas. It's definitely, I've seen, I've had this on my feeder quite often. So this is a red-bellied woodpecker, believe it or not. And this is a red-headed woodpecker. The red-headed woodpecker likes woodlands, open areas with snags. It's got that beautiful red head, looks like it was dipped in paint. But if you just describe this bird as having a red head and a black back and a white belly, you might end up getting it confused with this one. So you want to cue into the back. It's a solid black back, solid white belly, has big white wing patches. So don't just stop at one or two descriptors, really cue into more than that, just in case, because you might get a little confused towards the end if you only cue into a couple, especially with woodpeckers. A lot of them have these like kind of zebra back. And so you want to look at the breast, the back, the head. The red-bellied woodpecker actually does have a red belly, I promise. It's just like a wash of red. But this can be a little confusing. So touching on some habitat, where you are when you're birding is critical to understanding what birds you might be seeing. You're not going to see a great egret in a grassland. You're not going to see a lesser yellowlegs in your backyard. These are birds you're going to see in wetland areas only. Some grassland species include American kestrels. Dickcissels are classic grassland birds. Northern bobwhites are more grassland shrubby. They like a little more cover. But if you're in these kind of big open areas, there are a suite of species that you're going to expect to see and birds that you are not going to expect to see. So cue into where you are. Some common forest species. Excuse me, I need to get a drink of water. Include scarlet tanagers. This is a brilliantly red bird that you find in forests. It has black wings. Red-eyed vireos sing all summer. You're going to see this bird or hear this bird more than you actually see them. They say, "Here I am. Where are you? There you are." Kind of have this song that just they sing constantly. Wood thrush are going to be foraging on the forest floor, and they have a beautiful ethereal song. Broadwing hawks are a forest breeding hawks. You're going to see these in the summer. So these are forest birds that you're going to expect in the forest. Kind of a closed canopy forest. And then our suburban yards and forest edges, shrubbery edges, these are habitat too. These support a great diversity of birds. Many of the birds at your feeders come from this kind of edge habitat, like Carolina chickadees, Carolina wrens, northern cardinals, and you might hear a red-eyed vireo in your backyard. So these are going to be some common birds that you hear in your backyard. Moving on to range maps. This is a good one because this can help you kind of portion out the birds in your book so that you're not just completely overwhelmed. So if you're using range maps, for example, you're going to, if you're in the winter, you would expect to see white-throated sparrows. That blue on this range map is its winter range. So in Missouri, we get white-throated sparrows in the winter. We also get dark-eyed juncos in the winter. So lots of blue here in Missouri. A smart thing to do is to take, for example, a family of birds like sparrows and get a post-it note in your field guide and write down all the birds you're going to see in the winter, all the sparrows you'd see in the winter. Write down all the sparrows you might see in the summer. And this kind of narrows it down so it's not so intimidating, so overwhelming. And you can go look at those post-it notes real quick and do a quick reference. You can do the same thing with raptors. So this is, imagine these as post-it notes in your field guide. In the winter, you're going to see rough-legged hawks and northern harriers. You won't see these birds in the summer. Typically, there's always some exceptions, but generally you're not going to see these birds in the summer. We have a lot of raptors here year-round. Red-tailed hawks, Cooper's hawks, red-shouldered hawks, sharp-shinned hawks. Just realized the red-shouldered hawk is covering the other ones. American kestrel is here year-round. Merlins, we're going to only see those in migration. And then we have our broad-winged hawks that breed here in the summer. So, block out your birds, block them out by season. That's going to help you kind of narrow it down in your field guide. I highly recommend getting a handheld field guide for this reason. All right, so on to some common Missouri birds and their bird song. So this is a tufted titmouse. This is a generalist bird. You're going to find this bird in forest, woodland, your backyard feeders. These are very common little birds. They're a cavity nester. It's gray above, pale below, has that perky little crest. And they eat both seeds and insects, actually. You might look at that little bill and think it only eats insects, but it actually has a different way of getting into those seeds. Unlike a cardinal that would crush those seeds, they actually pierce the seeds to get that meat out. So they're very resourceful. And I should mention about 96% of land birds actually need insects to raise their young, even if they're a cardinal, even if they're a seed-eating bird. Many of these species also need insects during the breeding season. So insects hugely important for all bird populations. And the titmouse says, Peter, 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 Peter. Can you all hear that? Hopefully.
Yes.
Okay, good.
It sounds good.
Excellent. On to northern cardinal. This is another generalist bird, habitat-wise. You're going to see them anywhere with shrubs, in urban settings, at bird feeders. Probably the most recognized bird in Missouri. It was the most seen bird in the birding challenge last year. Males are a brilliant red with that red bill. I think the females are just as pretty with that beautiful red bill and kind of a red wash. And their song is pretty variable. They have lots of different songs, but generally it's a clear notes. To me, it sounds kind of like a laser gun. Pew, pew, pew. And you hear this all the time, probably in your backyard. These are very common species. Now, blue jays, these are such cool birds. They're loud, they're bold, sometimes perceived as aggressive bullies. They do defend their nests and young quite aggressively, and they are omnivorous. They eat insects, seeds, eggs, bird eggs, and so they do it all. And they're really cool because they are seed dispersers. So they played a really important role in vegetating parts of North America after the last ice age with oaks. So they have this sort of symbiotic relationship with oaks, and you can see that one there flying with a bunch of acorns in its mouth. They make lots of they cache up to they cache thousands of acorns, and of course they forget where some of those are, and so that's how we get oaks germinating. They actually put those acorns in the ground at the perfect depth for germination. So a really cool relationship there. They're the males and females look the same. and they have a kind of loud, harsh jeer call. It sounds kind of like J, J, J. And they're also known to mimic hawks. So they're a really smart bird. One of my favorites. This one's also a very interesting one. These are two species, black-capped chickadees and Carolina chickadees. We have both in Missouri, just to make it extra confusing. They're a generalist, like the titmouse. You find them in forest, woodlands, backyards. They're a cavity nester also. And we, in Missouri, right along the middle, actually are in the hybrid zone of Carolina chickadees and black-capped chickadees. And visually, this is very difficult to tell these two apart. Only if you have a very clear picture, can you even guess which species this is. You know, black-capped chickadees, you find them in the northern part of the state. Carolina chickadees, you find in the southern part of the state. Black-capped chickadees have a two-note song. I don't have it here. It's just like, and sometimes it kind of sounds like cheeseburger. So it kind of has a three-note sometimes, but mostly it's just two notes. And the Carolina chickadee has a four-note song. It's kind of sounds like Carolina. And of course, they both say chickadee dee dee, but their songs are different, and that's how you're going to tell those two apart. But if you see them, you're in mid-Missouri. Chances are, you know, you probably want to assume it's one or the other, and not guess which one it is unless you hear it singing. White-breasted nuthatch. This is a cool bird. I love my nuthatches. These are a woodland forest bird. Most places with trees. They are a cavity nester. They're dark gray on the back. They have that black head and nape of the neck, and their belly is white. And they have a nasally, like wah 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 kind of sound. These are another common bird at your feeder if you live, you know, with lots of trees nearby. Now, Carolina wren. This one is a bird with lots of attitude. Another common backyard bird, but you find them in forests and woodlands also. They like to nest in small, tight spaces. They have just a rich brown back. That bold white eye stripe is really distinctive. Wrens in general like to cock their tail up. You see that picture of a house wren here on the right. This is a different species. It's more uniform all around. But Carolina wrens like to nest in those tight spots, like your flower pot or the boots on your back porch. Are kind of infamous for that. So cool little birds. They're very loud for their size, super loud. And they have a variety of songs and calls, but I think one of their most common is they say tea kettle, tea kettle, tea kettle. So they have a lot of variety there. So I encourage you to go and kind of look up what different songs that they have. But they're a cool little bird. Lots of personality. The state bird of Missouri, the eastern bluebird. I have some nesting in my backyard right now, which is really awesome. This is an open woodland bird. It's a cavity nester, of course. The bluebird boxes have been actually so successful at boosting their population. You know, they were actually declining, I believe, in the 1970s, but blue box programs actually brought these birds back, and they're doing great now. So your bluebird boxes are doing a good thing for these guys. With European starlings kind of moving in, those are invasive species. They kind of compete directly with bluebirds for cavities. So do house sparrows. So your blue bird boxes are very important. Onto the indigo bunting. And something interesting about blue birds in general, there's actually no blue pigment in a bird's feathers. Most bird feathers are blue. Most bird colors come from pigments, like flamingos, they get their pink from the shrimp that they eat, but blue is actually a structural color, meaning that the light hits the microscopic structure of the feathers in a way that makes humans perceive blue. So they're not actually blue. Other birds might actually see the indigo bunting as like grayish, but we perceive it as a brilliant blue, which is pretty lucky. Indigo buntings like glades and woodlands, forest openings, they don't need much of an opening to take up shop. Old field edges, these are a common species throughout Missouri. The females look completely, brown, drab. This is a difficult one to ID in the field, the female indigo bunting. But that beady black eye is kind of what I cue into. It's an indigo bunting shape. It has that indigo bunting bill, kind of a thick seed-eating bill. And of course, you're going to see these in woodlands and forest openings. This is a young bird, young male. The eastern towhee has a great song. You find these birds, these are actually a sparrow. This is a large sparrow, believe it or not. Males have that beautiful black hood and rufous sides, white belly. Females are rich brown, where the male is black. And they're ground foragers. So you're going to see these birds foraging on the ground. They kick back leaves with both their feet to uncover insects and seeds. And the song is one of the most mnemonic. You use mnemonics to remember some of these bird songs, and they say, "Drink your tea." Drink your tea. You can't unhear drink your tea. That's all you will hear from now on. I'm sorry. But it's very useful in IDing these birds. Eastern phoebes, some of you might have these birds nesting on your back porch, underneath your back porch. You find these birds in open woodlands, forest edges, rock faces, backyards, and they bob their tail while they sit perched. And so you might confuse this bird with an eastern wood pewee. I don't have that bird on this presentation, but they're very similar flycatchers. But that tail bobbing behavior is a good way to separate the two. And they say their name Phoebe, and they like to nest underneath awnings and things like that. These are a pretty common bird to find on the side of your house. Phoebe. Great crested flycatcher. This is a bird you might not have seen, but I bet you have heard this bird. This is a large flycatcher, largest common flycatcher here in Missouri. Has that yellow belly, rusty tail, olive gray back, and a bushy gray crest. It's actually a cavity nester, so it needs dead trees or nest boxes. It's known for, a lot of cavity nesters are actually known for lining its nest with snake skin, which is pretty cool. Researchers think that snake skin is a deterrent for rodent predators that don't like snakes at all. And you hear this bird far more than you see it. And it's a loud, like, reep. Kind of sounds to me like a little bit like a frog. But you'd be surprised at how often you hear these birds. They're tough to see. They're going to be higher up, kind of singing at the top of a tree. Ruby-throated hummingbird. It's our only regularly occurring hummingbird in Missouri, which makes hummingbird ID in Missouri kind of nice. It'd be cool to have a diversity of hummingbirds, but this makes it nice and easy. We do get some other hummingbirds very rarely. But generally, if you have a hummingbird feeder, this is the bird that you're seeing. Males have that brilliant iridescent red gorget that can look actually dark or black depending on the angle or light. Females are gray on their back, or I'm sorry, green on their backs and gray underneath. Have a white throat. And they arrive in Missouri in late April to early May. So we have a few, they trickle in earlier than that. But by early May, you're going to start seeing your hummingbirds at your feeders, and they leave by October. If you put out a hummingbird feeder, four, four parts water, 1 part sugar, no red dye. Please don't put red dye in your hummingbird food. You'll almost certainly attract some. Summer tanagers are an open woodland bird. This is a brilliantly red bird, similar to the scarlet tanager. You might have thought this bird would be called the scarlet tanager, but it's not. It's the summer tanager. Its bill is actually adapted to catching bees and wasps. They'll rub them against a branch to remove the stinger before eating them. And females and immature males can be just a yellow wash all around. This is a tie-dye young male, so the younger males kind of grow in their red feathers gradually, and so they look kind of funny. Baltimore Orioles, beautiful bird, open woodland, forest edges, small groves of trees. They have a black hood, brilliant orange and yellow breast. Females are kind of an olive yellow with orange tones. And fun fact, females will actually get a little more orange as they get older. And orioles actually weave these really cool pendulous nests. They hang from the tips of branches of like large trees like sycamores and cottonwoods, and you can attract them using oranges at your bird feeders. So if you're in the right habitat, open woodland, forest edges, groves of trees, and you put out some oranges, you might get these birds. I don't get these birds here in my house, sadly, but for those of you who might, you should put out some oranges for them. And again, with the red-bellied woodpecker, here you can see that red belly. These are very common bird. You find them in forests, woodlands, neighborhoods, anywhere with trees. They are not picky. And their song is kind of a rolling chirr, chirr. Red-headed woodpeckers have a rougher, shorter, shrill. But this is the red-bellied woodpecker. Sorry, I kind of mixed up the sounds. That's a red-bellied woodpecker. Chirr, chirr. It's rolling. It kind of goes up and down. And the red-headed woodpecker, more shrill, shorter. And red-headed woodpeckers need park-like open woodlands. They need open space with snags. And they're going to be less common. They're definitely eye-catching with the head and the white patches on those wings. They're very striking birds, but they're going to definitely be less common. And the coup de grace woodpeckers, this is our largest woodpecker in North America since the probable extinction of the ivory-billed woodpecker. And this at 17 inches long, this is like a crow-sized bird. Jet black with a crimson crest and a white stripe down its neck. And when you see this for this first time, it's genuinely startling how large it is. They excavate large cavities. They're very important ecosystem engineers because other animals use those cavities later on. That wraps up the common birds that I'm going to go over. I wish I could go over more, but this would go on for hours and hours. So I'm going to wrap that up and talk about now some tools that you can use to help your bird ID journey. The Cornell Lab of Ornithology is the premier um, organization for bird ID, bird knowledge, bird research, everything you need to know. And they have made some amazing tools to help you identify birds and learn more about them and help in their conservation too. So All About Birds is a comprehensive online field guide um, with everything you need to know about not just bird ID, but it gets into bird ID skills. If you want to learn how to tell a sharp-shinned hawk from a Cooper's hawk, they have an article about that. They have articles about the kind of binoculars you should be using. They have waterfowl ID articles, common bird feeder birds, how to choose the right kind of bird feeder. They're a fantastic resource that I'm sure most of you have come across if you Google anything bird related. Common frequently asked questions, common problems you might have. I think I saw somebody in the chat room ask about keeping sparrows out of your bluebird boxes. This is a great resource for questions like that. How to make your home bird friendly. This is a great one, especially the 7 simple actions to help birds. I often give talks about bird declines. A study came out in 2019 that showed we've lost 3 billion birds since 1970, net loss of 3 billion birds. And so, to counteract that, these are things that you can do at home to help prevent those declines. This one's a big one. I'm sure many of you have heard of this one by now, but if you have not, Merlin is an app on your phone. You can actually also use it. I think there's an online version too, if you're on your laptop or computer. But Merlin is a bird ID app and field guide on your phone, and it can do sound ID in real time. It's startlingly accurate, and it has only gotten better through time. When it first came out, it would confuse some warbler songs. It would confuse some tanagers, similar songs it would confuse. And it still does, but it does it less and less often. I highly recommend using this. However, don't rely on it completely. Use it as an assistant. But if you hear a warbling vireo and it says you're hearing a warbling vireo, try to go then find that bird. Because for example, if you're on eBird and you want to record a species that Merlin is hearing, it might be telling you the wrong bird. That's, not uncommon. So it is very good, but it is not foolproof, and keep that in mind. But it will actually, as the bird's singing, it will light up and it will help you remember those birds as it's singing. So really amazing tool. It also has a step-by-step ID. I showed you that photo in the beginning of the sparrow, the robin, and the crow. It starts with a question kind of like that. What size was the bird? Was it robin size? Was it crow size? Was it goose size? What color was it? Was the bird eating at a feeder? Was it on a fence or a wire? So it'll kind of play 20 questions with you to get at whatever bird might be your bird, your mystery bird. And it takes into account where you are and what time of year it is. And photo ID, if you're ever so lucky as to get a perfect bird photo, you can input this into Merlin on your phone, and it will give you either one species or several species that it could be. So amazing tool. The Cornell Lab of Ornithology also has the Macaulay Library online. So this is bird media that's been archived for, decades. It's pictures, recordings, a really fantastic source of information that you can upload your photos to. But you can also use those photos to quiz yourself. And what I said earlier about the bird song, you need to practice, practice, practice. this is a way you can practice your birdsong. Now, caveat here, this quiz, it's ebird.org/quiz, uses media that people have uploaded. And so it's not always the best photo. It's not always the best audio quality, but it's real. These are real recordings that people use. And it actually, you can tell it, I want to quiz myself on birds in this region. So you can tell it Missouri, and I want to quiz my birds on birds that I only see during this time of year. So you can get it really specific as to what birds you're quizzing yourself on. So really cool resource, and it's free. Lastly, find a mentor. Find a birding friend that you feel comfortable with, that makes you feel like you can ask any kind of questions. And there are great groups in Missouri that are basically built to do this. So Missouri Birding Society is a fantastic society. It's statewide. They have walks and sponsor walks and things like that. They have a meeting twice a year. There's an upcoming one in early May in St. Louis. They're also a great resource. They're mobirds.org, fantastic resource for Missouri specific birding spots and descriptions and things like that, and birds that, a birding checklist for Missouri. There's also many Audubon societies throughout the state listed here. There's also some university Audubon societies, I believe, that I just learned about. So reach out to your local Audubon society, go on a walk with them. They often sponsor weekly or monthly walks and things like that to help everybody go out and see birds. And again, this is part of the Missouri Birding Challenge webinar series, and this birding challenge is about to start. It goes from May 1st to May 22nd. Registration is now open. You can go to mdc.mo.gov/Mo Birding Challenge, and the full rules and eBird how-to documents are online. We're trying to make it as easy as possible. We took a lot of feedback from last year, tried to make it even better this year. And the purpose of this is really for people to try out birding. We're trying to encourage folks to get outdoors and explore. And we're taking the emphasis away from competitiveness. We're not trying to give it's not the may the best birder win. It's, we're just trying to encourage you to go out and do some eBird, use eBird to track sightings, make some checklists. And if you, meet some requirements, you get entered into a free or into a raffle, a drawing to win different categories. So we've got backyard birder, dabbler, all that good stuff. So there's a small fee to participate, and I hope you all participate. Thank you. Now I can answer questions. I saw them rolling in. I tried to.
Yeah. So yeah, you had several questions. I think some people did have to head out, but again, we will be sending out an email with some information from this presentation, as well as links to websites and things like that tomorrow. But we'll go ahead and get to some of the questions. But one of them from right off the bat was, when should we expect orioles to start coming to our jelly feeders?
Oh man, so Orioles, they late April, early May is probably when you're going to start to see them. There's always some that trickle in early, but yeah, that's when I would start really looking for them to return. It's
Okay.
It's hard for me to remember specifics about each species
Yeah.
when they come back. I remember some, but
Yes.
eBird has great
So
tools for when you're most likely to see those
the
species.
So kind of start going ahead and probably end of April, maybe put out
Yeah,
some jelly to see if anything comes. Yeah.
yeah,
Jelly or
absolutely.
oranges, I mean.
Yep.
Okay, so the other questions we've had, let's see. Is there a foolproof way to keep sparrows?
Out of blue bird
Hmm.
boxes.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's nothing foolproof. So house sparrows are an invasive species. They're non-native. They are not protected. So if they start building a nest in a box that you own and you have access to, you can actually clear out that nesting material to kind of discourage them. And you have to keep doing it. They're pretty persistent. Keep doing it, keep doing it. Block up the hole for a while. Of course, that blocks the bluebirds from getting in, but you really want to keep the sparrows from kind of establishing. Um, but you can't. You're not allowed to mess with the nests of native species. But house sparrows, you can take that nesting material out. And there's a certain cavity size also that you can use. I think if you use I can't remember specifically, but you can look up the recommended cavity hole size, and that can help deter house sparrows as well.
Is a Jenny wren the same as a Carolina wren?
Jenny Wren.
I've never heard. It says Jenny wren, a Jenny, so that must be a local name or that someone uses
Yeah,
for
I'm
it
not
because I haven't
sure.
heard of that.
I would have to look that one up.
Um,
I'm not sure.
yeah, I'm
That's
not
a good
sure
question.
either.
Sorry.
Okay. Tomorrow
Yeah,
too
yeah,
about
we can investigate
recommendations.
and yep, yep.
So because I think Austin has a couple of favorites that he might recommend, and you might have some as well, Kristen. So we'll put that in
For
the email.
field guide.
Yeah.
Yeah, yep. I personally like the Sibley um, bird guide. It's to the eastern United States. That's my favorite. Their National Geographic also has a good one, but Sibley is the illustrations are really excellent.
Okay. This one you kind of already, I think, in your program. How do you tell a broad-winged hawk from a red-shouldered hawk if it's perched somewhere?
Yeah, so you're going to view into their tail if they're perched. And go back. There's photos of, actually, might have some at the end here. Oh, dang it. I don't have so much better with photos. Sorry. It's farther back than I remember. Sorry.
Well, I
Okay.
know you said broad
Yep.
wings are usually a summer.
Summer bird. Yep. And you look at the bars on that tail. That's what I was kind of wanted to show you. Much thicker bars. The red-shouldered hawk has kind of thinner bars. It also has like a rusty coloring to it. Broad-winged hawks are going to be streaky, but not like solid rusty colored. The immatures can get a little tricky, but really cue into the bands on its tail. And the habitat too. Broadwings are again forest birds. Red-shouldered hawks you see more common just about everywhere.
How can we get a woodpecker to a feeder? This person has them, has heard them, but hasn't had a
Hmm.
visit.
I recommend suet feeders. Woodpeckers really love suet feeders. um, they'll come to seed feeders as well, but those suet feeders really kind of cue them in.
And I like that. I mean, all these questions are fantastic, but I do agree with you that the Cornell Lab of Ornithology website would be a great resource for a
Hmm.
lot of these as well if people want more in-depth questioning or in-depth answers.
Yeah.
But would a red-bellied woodpecker hollow out a potential nesting cavity and then abandon it?
Uh, yeah, absolutely. That's a behavior that we see in a lot of woodpeckers or nuthatches too. They might start excavating a cavity and maybe the inside of that snag or tree turns out wasn't as favorable as they liked. Maybe something scared them off, like a snake or a squirrel or, a predator of some kind. Sometimes birds will make dummy nests. I don't know if that species of woodpecker does that, but some birds will actually make dummy nests. So, um, yeah, that would be totally, I would not be surprised to see that behavior.
One of the questions was about the black-capped in the Carolina, but you did go over that, so we'll just kind of go
Okay.
over that one. Um, Jenny would like a copy of the field markings to print. I'll have Austin put that field markings
Hmm.
picture in the email as well, but the one that had like how to, it broke down the different field markings that you
Oh,
would
yep, yep.
take note of.
Yeah.
So we'll do that. Let's see. Can roadrunners fly?
Mm, yes, they can fly. Yep. Um, they just prefer to run. Yeah, they can definitely fly. Yeah.
Their body is definitely made for
Uh-huh.
running, for
Yeah.
sure. Okay. Let's see. Okay, so someone, Donald, would like to attract great horned owls to his property. He has many large trees. If
Mm-hmm.
this is possible, how do you do this?
Attracting great horned owls. Um, that's a tricky one. I'm trying to think if they will use a box or not. Um, I will have to come back to you on that one. But just having the, forested area near your house is going to be your best bet. Um, I'll have to look into that one. I'm not sure.
Okay. Easiest way to identify the different sparrow species?
Yes, so sparrows get tricky. I would recommend first thing, like I mentioned in the presentation, to write down what species you will see at what times of year. So get a post-it note and write them down, look at those range maps. Um, and next is going to be really focusing on the head and the breast. um, the markings on its face and its head, they can get pretty nuanced, but that's going to be really your best bet in starting to ID these different sparrows. um, you know, Several species of sparrow has the kind of dot in the middle of its chest, like the song sparrow. So you can't just cue into one thing specifically, but definitely kind of avoid describing its back. That's going to be pretty uniform across most sparrow species. Um, habitat, um, you into habitat, whether you're near a wetland or um, if you're in an open field, you're going to potentially hear more grasshopper sparrows or field sparrows. If you're in more shrubby areas, you might hear different kinds of sparrows. So habitat, time of year, really cue into those markings on their face and belly. Avoid trying to cue into the back. So those are going to be pretty uniform across the board.
Okay, well, Jackie just let us know that the Jenny wren was an old name her mother-in-law used for all wrens, and then
Hmm.
someone spoke up and said that's colloquial for a house wren.
Nice.
So
Okay.
apparently
I
that's
learned
just
something new.
someone people said. Someone said they have a new wren this year, a Buick's wren, and there is a competition with the Carolina wrens for houses. How can any way to encourage them to stay? Put out a
Um,
boot?
with the Buick's run.
Hmm.
Hmm. So I think Buick's Run is going to be smaller, and so looking up what cavity size might potentially exclude the Carolina Wren, but allow the Buick's Run in might be your best bet. But yeah, Carolina Wrens can be pretty aggressive. So,
I liked
but
your boot picture though. Your boot
yeah,
picture was cute.
yeah, put out some boots. There you go. Um, or put up multiple birdhouses so that they have options that can be helpful too.
Okay. Well, that looks like it's it for our questions on here. I do want to let people know, though, that when Austin Lambert, our naturalist, sends out the email tomorrow to do the follow-up, that his email will be on there, so you are more than welcome um, to write him and ask any other questions. He can forward them on to Kristen, or he can answer them himself. So thank you all so much. Kristen, do you have anything else that you'd like to wrap up with?
Oh, thanks for everybody who tuned in. I appreciated it.
All right. Well, you all have a wonderful time birding this spring, and we hope to see you around. Bye.